Okay, everybody, we're here live on not the eve, we're like on the precipice of entering the second round. The first, maybe they did it back in the day when there was two rounds. I'm not sure. But anyway, in this era, the first time we're seeing the second round of the NBA draft having a day to itself. They're trying to emulate some of the chutzpah around that happens around the NFL draft. A deeper talent pool, more celebrating towards the back end. And the Raptors, to their credit, I think have accomplished a move that is worth celebrating. Footy Insights in chat says, we are so doomer pilled as a fan base that a totally fine flyer type of trade got us all hyped up, myself included. Man, I can't read right now. There you go. So basically, the trade in question, the Raptors are sending Jalen McDaniels, who is maligned in the fan base and was not, I don't think that his first year with the Raptors was that well received, let's say. He didn't he didn't live up to the billing. And so Jalen McDaniels goes out. Davion Mitchell, who I quite like, I don't look back and say like, yeah, he's still a lottery pick, but I quite like Davion Mitchell, and Sasha Vezenkov comes back. Now, on top of that, the Kings sent the Raptors the 45th pick today. So just to lay this out flat, Jalen McDaniels goes out, who really couldn't find playing time with the Raptors, didn't shoot the ball well, didn't make good decisions. The extra springiness he was supposed to provide at the point of attack or switchiness he was supposed to allow the Raptors defense, none of that really manifested. And so he's gone. Cool, great. People were wondering like why, we would have liked to see a better signing with the biennial exception than Jalen McDaniels. What this does is the Raptors, in what Trey and I talked about a while ago, is they utilize their extra cap space to take on less than desirable situations from other teams, and that's exactly what we have. Davion Mitchell has 2 years, I believe, of roughly 11 million between the two of them on his contract. Sasha Vezenkov just finished the first year of a 3-year, $20 million contract. I believe the next 2 years will come around somewhere between 14 million. So the Raptors are taking on basically $12 million worth of salary a season, and they're getting the 45th pick. And I don't know about Vezenkov. He didn't really pan out in the NBA, and reportedly he wants to go back to Europe, where he's had a ton of success. He's been a huge star over there. And some players, truthfully, just like being back, speaking the mother tongue, hanging out where they grew up, or being closer in proximity. As fans of Canada basketball or a Canadian team, seeing a lot of players and not being a free agency destination, even when there isn't a language barrier, we see how culture and home makes people make decisions. I think this is an A plus because Malik Monk isn't around, Nick Claxton isn't around, and while I definitely wasn't saying that they should go after Claxton, I know that Monk and Claxton were both very desirable to Raptors fans with cap space. The Raptors don't really have an opportunity to go after anybody with their cap space. So use that cap space to absorb some guys like the Kings, who are in a bit of a cap crunch that they want to get out from under. They probably are going to try and trade Harrison Barnes, if not today, throughout the summer. They wanted to get out of that. The Raptors say, hey, here's your relief. We're going to get pick number 45, and we're going to have the best point of attack defender we've had in a little while in Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell, I think there's more upside there than he gets credit for. Now, again, as I said earlier, I don't think he's like a lottery pick in waiting. He's 26 years old, by the way. So I have no qualms about, or I have no high ideals of Davion Mitchell being like a stud point guard and being tremendous. However, I do think that the Raptors currently have a really bad rotation of point of attack defenders. Emmanuel Quickley wasn't up to snuff this past season, not remotely. And Grady Dick is not going to do that. Jacoby Walter is not going to do that, at least not for the first couple of years. Ochai Agbaji was a player who's a little older than people thought relative to, when he got drafted, who was their best point of attack option. Davion Mitchell, as crazy as this sounds, Davion Mitchell is a better point of attack defender. And last season, he shot 36% from three on much lower volume, but he shot the 3-point better than Ochai Agbaji. So the Raptors have, I think, a backup point guard who, quite frankly, I think can run offense, especially if he gets paired with Quickly or with Scotty, who can take the brunt of that creation. And as long as he pairs well with Darko's system, I think that there's room for him to get a little bit better offensively, ameliorate, simply rise to mediocre there, and then also to provide a significant punch defensively. That is the big sell. Now, as Alex C says, EuroLeague MVP, baby. There is always some upside with Sasha Vezenkov. When he signed, like Brendan Nunez, I did a podcast with like years ago when they just got Sasha Vezenkov, or when it was being talked about, and he was really excited about Vezenkov coming to the Kings as the EuroLeague MVP, as a guy who can run offense, who can, in a pinch make plays, who can shoot it. All that stuff is there. I'm not sure if that's going to end up being represented on the Raptors. I'm not exactly sure if he plays in the NBA or in Europe. However, there's a little bit of upside there. And maybe you can just lean on like, well, Darko's a European coach. Vezenkov's the EuroLeague MVP. I'm not exactly sure. It all remains to be seen. But big spark notes. The Raptors' point of attack defense got better, and that's important. They have not gotten worse offensively. That's good. And Jalen McDaniels, I think, was a player the Raptors were eager to not have on their team. He's no longer there. And they get another kick at the can in the second round, which brings me to the second point. I've been poking around. I'm not sure if it's Chomche or Chomkey, but Ulrich Chomche, because you hear different announcers say it, and that's the one I've heard most consistently. It's bubbling up that there's like a Raptors connection there. With 31 and 45, now I'll put myself out on a limb. Feel free to clown me if this is wrong, but I think he's going to be playing in Toronto at this point in time. Now, I don't know exactly how it shakes out with both. Other things can happen as far as like trades that might get made. Just last night, at the end of the podcast that myself, Trey, and Cody were doing, I advocated for Jonathan Mogbo at 31. Many people, obviously, are very excited at the prospect of Filipowski, who they set the internet ablaze. I think it was Gavoni and Zach Lowe when they were discussing his girlfriend situation. But to me, I'm just like, well, he's the younger person in that relationship. I'm not going to focus on that. I don't rate Filipowski's handle or shot as high as a lot of other people. Eager to be wrong, especially if the Raptors select him. I'm interested to see what happens with what's going to be, the inaugural second round has its own day thing. And then I guess we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But here's the funny thing. You never know what's going to happen with this. This might end up being like a marathon stream because now it's the 45th pick, not just 31. I thought I could hop in here and just like, oh yeah, we drafted a guy, talk about it for a little bit of time, but now we're really in the thick of 45. And since it's early in the day, none of my pals are here to talk about it with me. And as we well know, I rely significantly on my scout friends to move me through this information. So I'm not watching the draft live or anything like that. And also there's copyright stuff, so I'm not just going to like pull it up. And okay, OG3 just put something in chat that I perhaps shouldn't talk about, but I cannot resist. OG3 says Filipowski's brother came forward and talked about it. Apparently, it's some crazy Mormon grooming thing. Well, I don't know if there's any Mormons in chat. I don't know if grooming and Mormonism go hand in hand. I doubt it. However, different little cultural niches have their place. And I don't know how that plays into Mormonism, or if Filipowski's brother said it came into Mormonism. But like, yeah, you never know how that's going to shake out, that kind of stuff. You go to different parts of America, you go to different parts of Canada, like when I was growing up in Saskatchewan, there was a guy who was he was a Hutterite. His name was Travis, and he escaped the Hutterite colony and he started playing sports with us at high school. And he was like 19, and he didn't like being Hutterite. He didn't like the culture or whatever. But it is a culture that exists, that people they maintain. and it's a thing. You never know where it's gonna pop up or what it looks like. I don't This is very far field, like, obviously, but, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with Filipowski. This is kind of brewing up, I think, to be some sort of, like, there's gonna be a TikTok, um, like, somebody's gonna do a TikTok breakdown of it or something, go searching through all the rubble. And, okay, so I think that the second round of the draft starts at 4 p.m. I'm just kind of perusing the different tweets from Shams or Woj at this point in time. Although you guys are so good at kind of updating me with information that I guess we'll see what's happening. So Shams is already doing his draft live special. He's giving out his little sources. The latest is reporting that Jamal Murray will be completing a 4-year, $209 million maximum contract extension. That's fun. KCP declined his player option. Just giving you guys news. I'm trying to find if there's any draft information. However, we got nothing. Cosmo says it starts in 10 minutes. Jewel says it's in 9 minutes. We got a bit of talking to do. Jurisic, I have to watch more of Jurisic, although I do like his jumper form quite a bit. And this is kind of the thing too, is like this kind of stuff is we're deep in the speculation of the draft. Like Jacoby Walter, as I said, I've watched 3 games of Jacoby Walter. One of them was his huge opening game, and that was fun. But I covered the NBA. I don't know many people who cover the NBA and can be like, oh yeah, I've seen like 17 games of Jurisic or something like that. Maybe some people have seen like 14 games of Topic if they really pay attention overseas. But when we're talking about Mogbo or we're talking about like Filipowski, a lot of people have seen more of those games. But Jurisic, I have not seen very much. AJ Singh. Sorry, I don't have much info. Whoever the Raptors draft at 31 in however many minutes, we're gonna have to do some digging together. Cosmo says, "Do you think Mogbo can develop a corner 3? Because that's my main holdup on him." So, and then OG3 says, "Do you think Mogbo being Scotty's BFF has any sway at all for the Bobby and Masai? Like maybe as a tiebreaker between him and Chauncey?" I don't. I don't believe in Mogbo's jumper. Not really at all. And quite frankly, I've watched some Mogbo games and then also watched like highlights and then also watched his misses. You go poke around on Synergy or something, right? You can't even find threes, really. Like it's just not a part of his game. And I love, like, there's a little bit of a handle there. He can convert out of keeper plays. He can reliably get the ball from one part of the court to the other if he's connecting dribble handoff sequences. If they're running their regular offense through, he can step in and provide that. I think that there's some playmaking stuff that's burning there. And he brings the lunch pail every day. Boom, 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 boom. Makes a lot of plays. Hustle. He's physical. He's athletic. I think he can get on the glass, which is more and more important in the NBA today. So while I don't really believe in a 3-point shot, I do believe in Mogbo's ability, even without a 3-point shot, to enact change and engender responses on the court with the way that he plays. 3-point shot is good. However, I think 3-point shooting with big men is often overrated because there's like 9 or 10 bigs in the NBA who actually engender a response that moves the defense or changes spacing dramatically. Most bigs, if they're shooting under 3 attempts per game, even if they shoot like 37%, teams are not really adjusting coverages based on that. That's not something that really manifests in defense. They're happy to, just based on like the points per possession or getting teams out of the offense that they like to run. They're going to hang off of those guys regardless and make it be a prove 'em situation. Like, as crazy as it is, Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes, we watched the start of this past season, right? Pascal has like a 9 for 51 stretch from 3. Scotty starts off the season on massive volume, almost 6 attempts per game, shooting like 42% and doing well off of pull-ups and shooting really well above the break. At the end of the season, Pascal shot better from 3 than Scotty did. However, Scotty's volume, Scotty's willingness, and particularly the above the break 3 shooting is what it's like way more important, even though the percentage was the same. And Pascal had a really solid shooting stretch, but in the playoffs, Pascal had a good playoffs, but it actually didn't mean anything that he could shoot threes at an okay clip. And he ended up shooting, what, 29% in the playoffs from three? And if he had shot 36%, it wouldn't have changed anything. You know what I mean? You have to shoot really, really well to be the type of big man who teams guard you differently. Cosmo says Siakam shot terrible in the playoffs. He didn't shoot many threes. He actually shot really well in the playoffs from the floor. He was like 55%. But the 3-point shots, he didn't take many. And the Pacers were still the highest scoring offense, right? And Turner is a guy who can create that defensive response, but Turner also, like, he had a tough playoffs for long stretches too, because he wasn't able to play make or make plays in the space that his jump shot provided. And then also teams were able to funnel more shots to Turner, which the Pacers didn't end up scoring that well during those stretches, at least when I covered their playoff run with Caitlin Cooper. It manifests in many different ways. Having like a middling 3-point shot is not as good as being like an elite offensive rebounder, or being like a guy who can guard a lot of different actions on the other end, or a guy who's going to be able to connect a lot of your plays and can play make a little bit. Like, that's just, if Jakob Poeltl shot 32% on 2 3-point attempts per game, it doesn't change anything. And it just never would. Teams aren't going to respond to that kind of stuff. That's where I'm at on that. So Mogbo, I don't believe in the 3-point shot, but I believe in everything else. So I do believe he'll be an NBA player. Filipowski, he is like, it's more important for him to have a 3-point shot, certainly. And I wonder sometimes if I'm missing something on Filipowski, because so many people like him, and people, from what I can read and what I hear when I talk to like scout pals or just scouts that I know, whether it's like like an NBA team scout or a prospect scout, is that those guys are a little bit higher on his defense. They're a little bit higher on his handle, and they're a little bit higher on his shooting. So I'm lower on Filipowski than I think consensus in so many different ways, which I'd be very happy to be wrong, because, I mean, I love when players are good. If Filipowski is good, then like, hell yeah. Gavoni was talking about him. He was like, his handle is really fantastic for his size. He was saying that he can shoot it, and the numbers aren't like home runs as a shooter or anything like that. And he said he isn't bad defensively. And big shout out to Merv. He's a longtime listener / viewer, as far as the podcast goes, and he reads my work. But he's a big fan of Duke, so he was giving me crap for being too low on Filipowski. So I'd love to be wrong. Jewel says the weirdest number is his girlfriend's age. Well, we've already discussed that, and I don't want to give it too much more airtime. Obviously, we gave it, I don't know, like 3 or 4 minutes. Hollinger leaked it. I'll tell you what, John Hollinger, he shows up in my replies all the time. And anytime we talk about being bald, he's got a tremendous sense of humor. And also he has the ride me, Keldon, you're an animal, Keldon, tweet from back in the day. John Hollinger tweeted, the Raptors could have leaked this 31st pick several hours ago. Not bad, just disappointed. Yeah, that's one thing that has stayed true as far as the Raptors. Like, there was kind of like this hubris around the Raptors front office that they couldn't do anything wrong and they only hit home runs. And if the Raptors, it seemed like something wasn't going well, you just have to wait, because Masai and Bobby, they're like operating on a higher plane. There was some of that kind of stuff. And that wasn't necessarily true, as we came to learn. Although I really love today's trade, it wasn't true for everything they've done. However, the fact that the Raptors don't really leak, that's pretty insane. Okay, you mean to tell me that they got a 2025 second as well? The Raptors did? Who's reporting this? Where's this coming from? Everyone in chat. I know I'm Samson. The Raptors never leak. Cole just got much more powerful. They do leak. They do. Every organization leaks, but the Raptors are pretty good at not leaking. They're not susceptible. In like Game of Thrones, Tyrion does the leak check, He says like Marcella is going to get married to 3 different people. He tells Littlefinger, he tells Maester, Grand Maester Pycelle, and he tells Varys. And he says like, which one of you guys is leaking the information? And Littlefinger didn't leak it, and then also neither did Varys. So he figured out, Pycelle, you're the rat. We got you, pal. The Raptors, I don't think, are susceptible to a leak check like that, maybe necessarily. Sean Cunningham tweeted this out. Okay, let's see. Sean Cunningham. League sources confirmed that the Sacramento Kings have agreed to trade Sasha Vezenkov, Davion Mitchell, the 45th pick in today's second-round draft, and Portland's 2025 second-round pick to Toronto for 6'9" forward Jalen McDaniels. They're whooping that ass, man. If that's true, Sean Cunningham, I don't mean to cast aspersions, but like, I works for Fox, beat reporter out of Sacramento, Kings Beat podcast. God bless. I can't confirm this to be true, obviously, because the powers that be need the official stamp. But wow, Koki Surndren says all this for Jalen McDaniels. No, all this to get rid of like $12 million a year on their cap. OG3 says better than the Pascal trade. Yeah. Portland's not going to be good next year. Like, there's no way. Their second round pick next year will be 40 or below. What? This is a heist. Masai just pulled off the bank robbery that Joe Mazzulla wants to pull off. What the hell is going on here? How is this happening? I can't remember who said it. They said this is the Grievous trade. What the hell? I know I'm not giving much insight here, but next year's draft is supposed to be quite good. And as we well know, the Raptors, like, you can pick good players from 31 to 45. I mean, Norm Powell went 46, but like, what the hell, man? Are we missing something? Like, this would make more sense, I think, if pick 31 was going to Sacramento. Like, in my mind, that would even it out. But apparently, this is what you get when you take on $12 million of salary. Is that it, man? Is that it? Good Lord. All right. I mean, they gone. That's like nuts. I know I'm not being, I'm not providing a ton of information here, but this is crazy to me. Eric Kareen, let's read his tweet because I think I do agree with it. He says, the Raptors deserve credit for having healthy enough books to be able to get an extra pick or two from the Kings. Let's not pretend it's some heist, though. They traded a player they didn't want for two the Kings didn't want. I do think it is a heist. I'm going to come away on the opposite side of Eric here. I think it's a heist. Now, as ACNB Atoven says, with new apron rules, teams charging a hell of a premium to take on money. I suppose. I guess that's also like Mogbo. I predicted it. Let's go. One sec, I have to gas up my own tweet. I have to have the Oprah like gif. I gotta go. And are you guys kidding? Let's see. Yeah, I know Eric tends towards negativity, but I like Eric quite a lot, and I like what he thinks. Okay, one sec. Who tweeted it out? Who broke this news? Who broke this? I need to figure this out. God, I feel so disorganized, Usually I have a ton of prep. I feel like a Twitch streamer who's just like responding to things, but okay. Jonathan Mogbo from Shams. Okay, everybody. Jonathan Mogbo. This is the guy I advocated for. This is the guy I wanted. So I'm very happy with this. And we kind of did like 8 minutes on Jonathan Mogbo, talking about the pros what I thought, and the cons, mostly the pros, because obviously I like Mogbo a good deal. Um, that's a home run to me. I like that a lot. Kind of what I had said. I expect Mogbo to be able to come in and do a lot of things at the NBA level. He doesn't shoot a lick. But guess what? There's plenty of other things to do on the court, especially as a big outside of shooting. So I'm ecstatic about that. Let's go. I mean, hell yeah. Jeez. Tyler Lue says Davion becomes our defensive stopper against guards, question mark. I do think for periods of time, yes. Like he will be. But as far as like genuinely, no, probably not. I don't think he'll get the minutes to actually be like this guy is the new stopper. Um but okay, let's go. Let me read the Caleb says when Samson uses the word lunch pail, you know he likes guy. Can I tell you something that broke my heart a little bit? When I played like high school basketball and I was going to like ID camps and like college tryouts and that kind of stuff, I scored the ball a lot. But once you start playing a better level of basketball and you're a white guy, you kind of get the lunch pail thing thrown at you. So I like describing people as lunch pail. That's like an accolade. That's a superlative. However, when it was told to me, it broke my heart. I was like, I'm a lunch pail player? Like, damn, man. It hurt me actually quite deeply. Okay. I have Mogbo's stuff written down somewhere here from the podcast that Trey and I did. Let's see. Jonathan Mogbo. Here we go. Here's a rundown. He's a 4-year junior out of San Francisco, 6'8", 225, 14 points per game, 10 boards per game, 3.6 assists, 63% from the field, nothing from three, 69% from the free throw line. I'll actually put the link in chat. There's a really great piece that Josh Codanera wrote about Jonathan Mogbo that I'll put it in the chat and you guys can read it. And basically, so when I was watching Mogbo, I was seeing that he runs a lot of handoffs. He runs a lot of delay action, which fits perfectly with what the Raptors are trying to do. And like, especially in Darko's scheme, right? And then it's easy to see how he can fit into a lot of the grimy little screens that the Raptors like. And also because the Raptors like those screens in the middle with their kind of like big wing and big to try and like, the defense always switches those screens. This is how Pascal and Scotty scored a lot of points together, is that when you run that action and the other team switches, when they move up to switch, the other player, usually Scotty, creates an inside lane to put his guy in jail to create post position so you can create a high-low feed. I think Mogbo is good enough to play that style with Scotty. Obviously not a ton. You're not going to build the offense out of it, but I think that there's room to like play make between those two together. And he is, I don't know if I saw enough to say he's one of the better screeners in the draft. However, I did like his screening. And I do think that you can just plop him into a bunch of the sets that the Raptors are inevitably going to run for Grady and for, at this, like Jacoby Walter. Grady and Jacoby Walter, if anybody wants to read a really good Grady piece I wrote, and I tracked all of his movement shots, and he shot really impressively on the move. And the Raptors are very comfortable running ATO sets for him and starting some offensive possessions with Grady in motion to see if they can just get a quick hitter. Jacoby Walter also had a ton of that stuff done for him at Baylor. It's easy to see how with RJ Barrett as a driving force, Scotty Barnes as a driving force, Mano quickly, provided he comes back, which I think he will, being a guy who can initiate offense, but also spaces the floor quite well. He doesn't shoot out of motion the same way that Grady does. He's not sprinting into a bunch of stuff, but he's good at forming up. The Raptors should have a lot of shooting on the floor at once, and having guys like Mogbo and Pirtle who don't shoot the ball, but, Pirtle obviously much better than Mogbo at this point, guys who do a lot of other things well to kind of be the wheel greasers on those possessions. You have shooting, you have a wheel greaser, and then you have Scotty Barnes to kind of try and create events that create advantages for the offense. The Raptors offense, I'm not worried about at all. Everything I see, I think works. That's why I feel good about Mogbo. I was really impressed with Darko and the players' ability to manufacture offense, given that they're not the most talented team in the NBA, that they got looks. I was particularly impressed during that middle part of the season when the Raptors had like a top 6 offense for like a month when they had that glut of wings, and particularly with Scotty and Pascal playing next to each other. It's not a ton of shooting on the floor with Jakob there as well. However, they started to really crack down on the screens, the timing, being able to slip and get more north-south than east-west. And I really think that the Raptors offense should come together quite well. The only thing that you're looking for with this team is for them to take steps defensively, because they were truly, truly horrific there last season. I think Mogbo can defend. I think that you can picture a lot of actions where Mogbo can step up and help the guards because he can cover more ground and he can play a little bit more aggressive to give the guards a little bit of extra buffer to catch up to some of the guards that they're trying to guard across from them, because the Raptors will need that. Pearl can't necessarily do that. Mogbo might be able to, and Kelly Olynyk certainly can't. That is what I think might be really interesting here. And Mogbo, I think that there's room for him to be like a backline rim protector with some pop. I don't feel necessarily very comfortable. I know he played a lot of it at San Francisco, but strictly playing drop, I'm not sure if he's like, I don't think he has the size to pull that off at the NBA level. He's pretty good at the two-man, like the cat and mouse game of managing the 2-on-1, the distance between two players. But I don't think I just don't think he has the size to passively do that, because NBA guards are bigger, NBA wings are bigger, they're more athletic, they shoot the ball better. Them bearing down on him is not the same as like what we saw in the NCAA. And with Mogbo on top of that, I think like a backline sweeper is also maybe too much to say, but I think that there's potential for some secondary rim protection. But I do think that what Mogbo will allow them to do is contain the ball a little bit better. Now, Samuel Barefoot says, is Mogbo someone you could imagine getting playing time in year one? You know, and also I forgot to read it. Sorry, Samuel donated $2 and said we got 2 second-round picks in the Sacramento trade, which we had discussed. But thank you for the donation, Samuel. I do think Mogbo could get playing time in year one. And I do think that because in my mind, what happens next year is the Raptors, Scotty takes another leap and kind of just drags that team wherever it needs to go. That's what I think is a potential. And if Scotty is simply just an all-star, you know, working his way towards all NBA at all-star level, let's say, I think that the Raptors will struggle once again next season. I don't know if they're punching up into the playoff picture. That puts them in a position where, you know, I think like they're looking at the 2025 draft, which everybody seems to be in love with, and saying, we can get another guy here. Mogbo, the Raptors aren't going to be good enough, I think, to like exclude him from lineups or be like, no, we can't get away with playing this guy. I don't like, they won't be good enough to feel that way. And he's certainly a player who should get looks. I mean, and if there's any history of the Raptors, like he might get looks early, because we don't really know about the coaches necessarily, but the Raptors front office, we've seen a lot of guys who get drafted later get minutes early on in the seasons. I hate Strike Freedom 5 says, who are we scoring on? I do think this is less of a draft situation, but I've written a lot about the structure of the Raptors offense and broken down a lot of different things. They've done a really good job of setting up the framework for it, and not having Scotty towards the end of the season really hurt, but there's a lot of stuff going on with the Raptors. Particularly, I think Grady coming around as a shooter because he had such a tough start to the season. Emmanuel quickly is always going to be a high-level shooter. We're just waiting to see, you know, what level his driving game reaches. I don't think he gets that high, but I think it's certainly competent. RJ Barrett was tremendous offensively last season. The defensive questions are like, and rightfully so, they bring up questions about team building, the future of this team, how that kind of works. But I think that the Raptors have the tools and the framework to score the basketball, and especially so with a healthy Scotty, because it was a source, like it was not fun to watch Ochai Agbaji and Kelly Olynyk and Jalen McDaniels try and lead offense for long swaths of time. It wasn't good basketball. It was bad. But when they had their guys healthy, they figured out how to score the basketball. What they do have to figure out more than scoring, I think, is how to guard the basketball. And they have some of the guys on the team. And when we get a full preseason or training camp with Scotty, with Pirtle, when you look at the rest of the starting lineup, like Scotty and Pirtle, they're 2+ defenders. Scotty can range up to like plus, right? He was giving somewhat close to all defense level impact, and certainly the numbers last season before he got injured. Pirtle was a little bit more under the radar, and he had a really tough stretch in November of last season. But we're looking at a team that has a couple really high-level defenders in their starting lineup. I don't know about RJ. Like, I don't think he's a high-level defender. I think he's a negative on the defensive end. I think that Quickly last season was a negative on the defensive end. I wonder if Quickly can get back to being like a slight positive or a neutral once he plays more minutes with Scotty and Pirtle to kind of like incubate him a little bit. And also with Davion Mitchell, if they're going to split time together, then Quickly can return to some of his roots of being a strong off-ball and team defender at the point guard position. This kind of stuff may manifest. It might be Grady in the starting lineup, and Grady's not going to be a plus defensively. I like how he identifies what's going on defense, and he oftentimes will be in the right spot. And he doesn't mix up a lot of the rotations either. He's usually on time. He's just slower and slighter. So he needs to get that body to a certain level before he can start making a real impact defensively. But I don't think that'll be next season. It should be interesting to pay attention to, but they have to be able to guard. They do, however, have in Davion Mitchell, in Ochai Agbaji, 2 strong defenders on their bench. I don't know how those guys factor into, the rotation next season. I don't know how Vezenkov is going to work out with the Raptors or what's going to happen there. I'm not expecting a bunch of defense from Vezenkov. And if Mogbo, it might be a little bit of a stretch to expect a first-year big to be a positive defensively. But I do think if they play him in the right lineups, there's potential for it. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But Philan Sibis says, who do you think we pick up at 45? I think Ulrich Chomchi is who the Raptors select at 45. Just an inkling, I guess. We'll see what happens with it. But I'm happy with Mogbo, man. I advocated very hard for him yesterday. I talked to Josh Codanera, gave me the pitch on Mogbo some time ago. Oh, I have to find his piece. One sec. Get ready for some typing noises. But I have to give you guys the piece that he wrote so you guys can go read it. And it'll be more elegantly put together than what you're getting from me live if you want to go read this. It's going to echo a lot of the sentiments that I've laid out here. But yeah. So that's in chat. Abrelos Ojo says, say 3 positive things about Ochai challenge. Okay. Ochai, until Davion was on the roster, was the best point of attack defender on the roster. Firstly, now he is the second best point of attack defender on the roster. He cuts well. He doesn't finish well, but he cuts well. And he has a significant motor. Those are the 3 things. However, what disappoints me with Ochai, and Aubrey, you've obviously heard me say this many times before, is that he plays as if he's like 6'8" or 6'9", and he's like 6'4", 6'5", and he just hasn't shot the ball well at all. He shot like 25% from 3 as a Raptor. That's that can't fly. That's not going to work. Feline says, nice smile. It's Max Jess says, Ochai is crazy athletic. He is. He's very athletic. He's incredibly handsome. I think he's one of the most handsome men in the whole NBA. He could retire from the NBA and just be a male model if he so chooses. But we need to see that 3-point shot come around, kind of how we saw it come around towards the end of, let's say, his Kansas tenure. My Radiant Morning says the Raps must know Koloko is coming back. why they stay away from center prospects. I would love if Koloko came back. That was one of my highlights of my first year in Toronto was when I watched all of Christian's pick and roll defensive tape and then tracked it all. I and then I got to sit down with Christian and we went through the tape together and talked about it. And it was like such a treat to be able to pick his brain about what he was seeing there and why he made the defensive decisions that he does. It's one of my favorite pieces I've ever written. And I think Christian is like a great young man. And I also like everybody spoke so highly of Christian around the team. He's very popular. It's just those health problems are really, really tough, you know, like really, really tough. And I haven't heard anything that indicates that he's coming back. I know he's like maybe started working out and stuff like that, but players work out all the time. I would, if Koloko does come back, I hope that he can find a place on the Raptors because I do think he's good. And he's also, I think he's quite a special mover at his size. We just saw a draft wherein like Klingon and Edie, like Edie tested out as a better mover in like shuttle drills and like agility than Klingon did. Koloko, I thought the way he was able to move his feet, get sideways, change angles, there's like some kinesiology stuff in that. Like his shin angle is really good for a guy with his height, and his ankle flexion is really good for a guy with his height. He was a really unique mover, and he's so big and long. I want all the best for Christian. Yeah, but I don't really know what's happening with that. I guess we're all just waiting on picks. I should go see who's been picked so far, actually. That's what I'm going to see what's happening with that. Greg F says, Sans Boucher, we have two players taller than we have two players 6'9" or taller. Jakob and Kelly. Scotty is taller than 6'9". Like, I'm so certain of it. I'm so certain that Scotty's taller than 6'9", although I can't say exactly. Tyler Kolek just went to the Trailblazers, 34th. Let's see. The NBA draft tweet out 34th. The 33rd pick, Tyler Smith. I saw people saying that they wanted either Tyler Smith or Tyler Kolek. I can't remember. Kyle Filipowski went to the draft. And people were saying Mormon. That's funny. I'm obviously very late on this. I'm sure this broke like 10 minutes ago. Everyone got their jokes off. I'm almost certain of it. But so a lot of the guys that Raptors Twitter, from what I could tell, wanted, because I tweeted out earlier today who people wanted, and there's like 40 replies with a wide variance of players. But Tyler Kolek was popular, Tyler Smith was popular, and Kyle Filipowski was option number one. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Maybe just the hair giving more height. Yeah, I mean, it could be, but I've spent more than most people in this world. I've spent standing next to Scotty Barnes, and I feel okay about my, the eye test for height, like trying to gauge how tall somebody is, like when you're in their presence. And Scotty, it feels like more than 6'9", but I mean, this could just be yapping, as we all know. What are the cap implications if Vezenkov goes back to Europe? I believe, now I'm not a cap guy. This could be wrong, so feel free to roast me if it is. But I think that there's cap hold stuff, but it does count if they leave and there's like, it's agreed upon. It can just be like cap relief. I think, although there are cap hold implications, if I remember. But yeah. Greg F says Scotty measured 6'7" at the combine. With shoes, he's 6'9". Everyone said, I think it was Michael Grange at the start of last season. Can't remember. He tweeted it out. We all talk about this in the media room, but he tweeted out that he was like, I think Scotty Barnes is like 6'10". This guy is huge. But I'm not really sure. Abrelo Soho says, has anyone compared Reed to Lowry? Outlier outcome, obviously. Reed Shepherd? I haven't heard that. However, I think Reed is very cerebral player. I'm not doing the cerebral thing just because he's white. That happens all the time. It's like, you get these taglines. Lowry's a very cerebral player. It's unbelievable the way that he sees the floor and decides to input himself into games. But I don't know if I see a Reed and Lowry comp really, although that would be a very fun outcome. Um, it's MX Jess says, have you talked about Davion at all? Yeah, I talked about Davion a good bit at the start of this train. Although I guess we could just to cover our bases, we can give everybody the statistical profile. Um, Joey Hoser says, I don't understand why there's always debates about how big guys really are. It's an objective measurement. Why don't we know for sure? That is so funny. I think Kevin Garnett did significant harm to this because he just lied. Like Kevin Garnett was 7 feet and he just lied because he didn't want to be 7 feet. And so it created a framework for conspiracy thinking. And I think everyone likes a little conspiracy, especially a harmless conspiracy. You know, there's like a million of them. I know the Bodega Boys for a long time. One of their pet conspiracies was like Babe Ruth was like a black Dominican. Is there any harm in Babe Ruth being a black Dominican? No. Is that like a funny thing to be like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess. KB says Kevin Durant was listed at 6'9" for years. Yeah, sometimes players lie. So it creates like this whole cottage industry for people to be like, I don't think so, which is fun. And then Caleb says FEV is not 6 feet. Agreed. Similar to Scotty, I've spent a decent amount of time standing next to Fred. I don't think Fred is 6 feet. I'm not 6 feet. I exist somewhere in the liminal space between 5'11" and 6 feet. I think it was like 5'11" and a quarter when I got, when I went to college tryouts, they marked me at 6 feet, but they gas it. They always gas that measurement. I think Fred is about my height, and I'm not 6 feet tall. So yeah. Aubrey Losojo says, are you a wingspan or a standing reach guy? I have a bad wingspan and a bad standing reach, actually. So that's funny for me. I think I have like an even wingspan and I have a bad standing reach because I got this long neck. Somebody like my best friend Oleg, his shoulders sit high. So his standing reach is actually insane. And then obviously he has a decent wingspan on top of that. But I think wingspan is important. I think like there's times when I've played basketball and you see somebody like they occupy like a similar space to you, but they just get there. And it's because they have that extra thing. Or when you're trying, like you're driving and you want to get the ball off the glass and you're trying to beat somebody to the glass and they just get you, it's like, man, an extra inch would have helped there. I think they are important measurements. I think they get like fetishized a little bit and sometimes people over index on them. But I do think for the people who started paying attention to it early, they definitely were picking up on something that was a little bit important because before you started measuring these things and before we started capturing that, we're looking at guys and trying to understand why they're able to do things a little bit more than other guys. And sometimes the explanation for it was like, we didn't think to measure their arms. We used to just measure height. It's like, how is this guy always getting to this ball? How's he always winning these battles? And a lot of these times, that's kind of, it does show up in the measurements. Now, you don't want to reverse engineer it and go measurements equals this, but sometimes you can see it in the measurements. OG3 says, Samson, all these measurements definitely scream lunch pail guy. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. I'll take the lunch pail thing, whatever. I can be lunch pail. That's kind of how it shakes out. Either, you live long enough to be a superstar, something you live long enough to see yourself become the lunch pail guy. I can't say. Okay, we're going back to the NBA draft Twitter account to see anything that's updated. What? They just updated Tyler Kolek? Oh, wait, okay. Juan Nunez got drafted by the Pacers at 36th. You know what this means? Warren Weisfeld, Raptors Republic member, he said that the Raptors should trade back and select Juan Nunez. I don't think it would have been there. And 35th pick in the NBA draft, Johnny Furphy. I liked Furphy. Not like a whole bunch, but I liked Furphy. I I wouldn't have been, I guess, upset at Furphy, but I wouldn't have pined for him. I watched this. It was a tremendous edit of a Seinfeld scene. It's the one where Kramer talks to George about yearning versus craving. It's a good thought, do you yearn or do you crave? And what are the differences? What's the subtext of it? But it had the soundtrack of Twin Peaks. It's very emotional, and they obviously use some sort of AI to remove the laugh track. But I've never craved or yearned for Furphy. I felt as if I was yearning for Mogbo. Cosmo says, what is the difference? Okay. Yearning, I think, is a more in-depth emotion. I think when you crave something, that's like more superficial. A yearning is more connected to the soul. You don't yearn for the donut. You crave the donut, but you don't yearn for it. But you yearn for a loved one. You yearn for meaning. I think that is the difference between craving and yearning. And that's why Kramer, he was a guy who, certainly after the series, like the actors, blah, blah, blah. But Kramer had a much better hold and handle on his sensibilities and his spirituality, I think. And George was like this hedonistic man who was just conquered by his superficial wants. Whereas Kramer seemed to be, when he would do something, yes, he was, he would go and do something quickly. He was impulsive, but he was always, it seemed like, servicing something deep inside of him. Whereas George was always running from that, i.e., how they act out yearning or craving. And this is what George said. He was like, no, I crave all the time. I never yearn. And then, but anyway, that's kind of how it breaks out. OG3 says, I yearn for a Bruce Brown trade. I did think it was funny. We're just, Aubrey Los Ojos says it's much more succinctly than I do. He says it's just the difference in intensity of desire. It could be. It could be. I think you could probably write like an essay on the difference between yearning and craving. So here's my thoughts. The Bruce Brown trade, because my friend goes by Hoop Goose, tweeted out that Bruce Brown, he's like, this is his last day as a Raptor. And then Bruce Brown responded, was like, damn, y'all really don't want me, huh? And I didn't get that because Bruce didn't want the Raptors. Bruce was openly like, yeah, I think I would fit really well in the Knicks. Like the conversations around Bruce, with Bruce, the organization, the expectation was Bruce was not going to be a Raptor. And I think Bruce was very okay. I think Bruce was very okay with that outcome. And Raptors fan says, why is Bruce looking up his own name on Raptors Twitter? Yeah, I do this too. This is something that like people in my position, sometimes they'll look themselves up on Reddit. I'm like, why would you do such a thing? Why would you ever want to know what like that many people think about you? It's more important for the people in your immediate sphere, I think. But yeah, I guess Bruce probably hears a lot of that stuff. But I mean, you got to like, it is a little bit dishonest. He's like, damn, y'all really don't want me. It's like, Bruce, you didn't want us. Like you were pitching yourself around, interesting. H. Johnson says there's also a time element to crave versus yearn. Craving is a shorter term impulse, whereas yearning could have more longevity. Yes, H. Johnson. A nice reprieve from the draft talk. We have to talk about, yearning versus craving. I like this. Joey Hoser brings up something and says Bruce is a fine player, but he's just valuable as a depth piece on a good team and not really valuable here. So we ought to convert that value. Yeah, I do. I think Bruce is a strong NBA player. I think the idea of Bruce was probably a little bit more based in the fact that he had played with like Kyrie and Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic, and these guys just bent defenses like so far out of shape, and he was so good playing off of that. And he was really good at playmaking on the move, the touch shots, making plays in space against bent defenses. When he went to Indiana kind of does it not so much like Tyrese is like bending the defense. It's like, no, Tyrese is making really quick decisions in an offense that's building out these advantages by getting 5 guys to work in unison, and he didn't fit seamlessly into that, and his defense also dropped off quite a bit in Indiana, and that's what Caitlin Cooper told me as soon as the trade went through when we were doing our coverage of it, and I also had to tell her, well, Pascal Siakam's defense isn't what it used to be either, so we were both kind of introducing the audiences or the respective fan bases to bad news. Bruce, though, it's a little bit different with the Raptors. You can see why it might work, but you can also see why it's not working the same level that it did. And also, like Malik Monk is making, I think on his over the duration of his next contract, like 14.3% of the cap. He's making less money than Bruce Brown. And Malik Monk is definitely better than Bruce Brown. And Bruce Brown just got like a big fat contract that maybe perhaps got signed a little bit so that the Pacers would have trade ballast because the Pacers wanted to trade for Pascal and wanted to trade for OG and were in the game for those guys. They were like, they were observing or paying attention to what was happening around the Raptors for quite some time. And we're looking at, Bruce was signed on a bigger contract that fit into that trade quite well and would have fit into an OG trade quite well too. So that's meaningful. Aubrey Loso host says, I meant Bruce is an off-court legend, by the way, by some standards for what it's worth. Yes. I get it. Well done. All good. Okay, we've got new draft picks. Bobby Klintman went to the Timberwolves at 37. That's interesting. I didn't find Bobby like that compelling. And also, like, most Raptors fans, well, not most. I don't know what percent of Raptors fans watch preseason games, especially against the Australian teams. But you would have seen Bobby for a short amount of time. When I watched that game, I was like unimpressed. However, that's the only full game I've watched of Bobby Klintman. I was not deep in the NBL. I watched some highlights. I watched some synergy clips and stuff like that, but nothing popped to me. And I feel since I'm not in on Bobby Klintman, I don't know what the pitch is necessarily. This is an awesome question. Tetris says, guess the Raptor player that can climb a higher grade than you. Okay, so my highest climb grade is V5. If I'm thinking about, it's really hard to just jump onto a wall and climb V5. Who would climb V6? Who would climb V6? Maybe do we go with length here and just assume that like somebody could just jump on the wall? I don't know. Ochai, it seems like, has the highest strength to fat percentage ratio, which is actually really important for climbing. Although I don't know anything about these guys' extracurriculars and their grip strength or their like hip flexion to like for that step through, I don't really know about that. So I think let's say Ochai, Tetris says length is a good factor too, though. Yeah, length it helps, especially on slabs. But the thing is, like, the more length you have, the farther it pulls you off the wall. So sometimes the length can be helpful in that you can reach a hold. However, length isn't always helpful. Like the best climbers typically exist between like 5'7" and like 5'11" or something like that, because you don't want to be too big on the wingspan, because then your arms, they pull you farther off the wall. You can't be as tight to the wall. It creates like the longer pulley system. Anyway, Quickly is a good one too, Jingping says. Yeah, Quickly does have, he definitely, like, he looks like he has like the big lats, that like stretch out your back or whatever, which is also important for climbing. I wonder. Tetris says there's a few 5'3" women in the climbing competitions around the world. They're great. Yeah, sorry, I was speaking for the men, which I shouldn't have, just because women climb as well as men. Jeez, some women they can get up a wall. Adam Ondra is 6'1". However, I've watched a decent amount of Adam Ondra stuff, and even he says that his height is a bit of an outlier. Who's the other YouTuber? Emil Abrahamson. He's big, jacked, and he's tall. He's a really good climber. I was with Oleg and we watched, I think what do we watch? Like one of the international climbing or bouldering competitions. And I think the guy who won is like 6'1", I think. So Okay, interesting. So anyway, we've been talking about climbing for too long. Jingpeng says, "I'm 5'3" and climb." Hell yeah. I just started climbing. I think it's like the coolest thing. I love it. I enjoy it so very much. AJ Mitchell went to the Knicks. I don't know if I'm missing out on anything because I'm going by the NBA draft thing and they wouldn't report the trades, I don't think, because all of the trades are speculative and agreed upon, not in writing or anything like that. So let me go dig around on Woj's page. Okay, Memphis is targeting Jalen Wells at 39. Okay. The Knicks traded 38 to OKC. So AJ Mitchell went to OKC. Okay. We just had people in chat. Everyone's correcting me now. Yes. Excellent. So they went to OKC. That's so. Who did OKC draft yesterday? Round one. They have just like a glut of guards. They have Shea, they have J Dub, they have Isaiah Joe, they have Dort, they have Cason Wallace. They drafted Topic. They drafted AJ Mitchell. That's a lot, man. Like, and good for them. Good for them. That's a lot of guards. And this I don't this is why I thought they should have gone in, like made a bigger trade to give themselves like a little bit better of a shot this season. Plus Caruso, yeah. Indy Lee says. Um, that's so much. And do people value their picks more once they've been drafted? Like, is AJ Mitchell more valuable right now or after he's played a year? Or is like Topic more valuable after he's played a year? Or is it more valuable to like package these picks so that teams can make of it what they will? Yeah, I know Topic has like the partially torn ACL. So it is like, as you say, kind of like it is like a redshirt season to some degree, although I think he'll play. It just probably won't be the first half of the season. Alex C says 5 out go Burr. They do love their guard screening. They do. But even still, that's so much. That's like so much. They're going to ask J-Dub to be weird, I feel like, and Caruso to be really weird to try and account for this. This is interesting. Okay, we'll update. So far we have Jonathan Mogbo at 31, Kyle Filipowski at 32, Tyler Smith at 33, Tyler Kolek at 34, Furphy at 35, Juan Nunez at 36, Bobby Clintman at 37, AJ Mitchell at 38, and Jalen Wells at 39. And wow, 5 straight picks traded. 34 was a traded pick, 35 was a traded pick, 36 was a traded pick, 37 was a traded pick, and 38 was a traded pick. At least that's what the ESPN is saying. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Okay. They're all traded from one place or another. That's crazy. Picks just like bam, bam, bam. Gavoni was under the impression Topic isn't playing. Interesting. You know, I guess maybe some guys, the timeline for torn ACLs, I guess, is shorter than it used to be. At least that's what I'm, I guess, anecdotally observing. And I guess, yeah. But a guy can always just take a little bit longer. Maybe Topic is going to take longer. That's interesting. Tetris said, did we react to the Jalen McDaniels clip going around? No, I haven't reacted to anything. Although, I guess we'll see what happens with if somebody wants to DM me that clip on Twitter, I'll watch it. Joey Hoser says, should we even talk about Bronny? I think Bronny will be an NBA player. And I don't, maybe 45 is too aggressive and maybe the politics is all a little bit too much, but I actually think Bronny will on merit be an NBA player for some years. That's what I think. Enigmatical says, thoughts on Adam Bona falling to us? Dick and Bona, 2-man punch. That's I know a lot of people like Bona. And I don't know, the thing is, like, It's hard to get a consensus at this point in the draft because so many people will talk about it. They're talking about, like, their guy. Like, there's not, like, an online dialogue about Bona. There's not an online dialogue about AJ Mitchell. There's just a few people who really advocate for those guys. So when you hear about those guys, it's usually someone being like, "Yeah, you're getting lottery value here," you know? And so it's hard to get, like, a consensus. You really have to watch so much of it, which is why, you know, I'm at, my wit's end trying to account for so many different players. Oh, my days. Yeah. It's, okay. I wonder who the Raptors go at 45. Like I said, I think it'll be Chauncey. However, I wonder because, like, so much of the conversations or so much of how the second round goes is, like, players who think they have a little bit of leeway to navigate their way to a place that they want to play. And because of the way that, the second round deals can be structured, there's a lot more freedom for players to say no to things, to sign as a undrafted free agent, all that kind of stuff. And you can kind of flex your muscles a little bit more because the money won't be that different. And I really wonder how the Raptors, I think there's potential for them to have an undrafted free agent, as anybody who's paid attention to the draft coverage at this point, a UDFA that I would like is Cam Spencer. I don't think that Cam Spencer, I think he'll get picked. Now, probably between like 50 and 60, but I guess we'll see. But at 45, I'm just going to say, like, maybe it's Chauncey. Tim Waring says, how many players drafted as low as 45 ever played even a memorable role for the Raptors? Tim, have you heard of Norman Powell? He's pretty good. He had a hell of a career. And also, I guess Fred doesn't really count. But anyway, Cody Wiles is here to save me. Cody, I've been talking by myself for an hour and 6 minutes. Give me your thoughts on Davion Mitchell, on Mogbo. I was right. Well, tap on the back.
Yeah, there you go. You got your guy.
I'm gonna drink some water.
Yeah, I could tell you were fading a little bit. I was watching a little bit on the way back. You're talking about Kleiman, Steinfeld, and Kramer. I don't know how I can't really contribute to that talk. What I can contribute to is Mogbo, and I know he's your guy. We were talking about it last night, right? He does everything well except shoot. Like, just a complete non-shooter. But man, I didn't even know he was Scotty's buddy. I think you guys might have mentioned that yesterday as well. But yeah, I mean, great athlete, strong. God, he rebounds the hell out of the ball. Over 10 rebounds. I mean, he fits Darko's system offensively for what you want outside of the shooting, but he makes quick decisions, has mobility, has length. I like it. I'm glad I made it in time for pick 45. I believe the Raptors acquired that in the Masai's back. What a trade, hey? I'm sure you guys have touched on that. What a trade.
So I do, like, I've already given my thoughts. As Yosef Kossady says, thank fucking God someone answered the call. Yosef has been lamenting my solo job here. I think maybe after 25 minutes, this happens when I do the reaction podcast at the games, is like we get 25 minutes of analyzing the game, and then I'm answering, chat questions, and then we can get to all the peripheral stuff, which is rock climbing and the difference between yearning and craving. But everyone has heard my thoughts, too much of them at this point. What are your thoughts on that trade?
I mean, on the Raptors side of thing, you'd be hard pressed not to like it, right? I mean, it's a pretty good deal if you're the Raptors, and you could see the Kings would. I've seen people online questioning why the Kings would do it. They're trying to get off cap. They're trying to reset kind of their things cap-wise. But for Toronto, a backup point guard has been how long of a need for this Raptors squad. And they get a pretty good one. I mean, your point of attack defender. I remember the trade deadline when the Raptors had Dennis Smith Jr. for about 2 seconds. I was super pumped for that point of attack defender that the Raptors kind of need. And if you're looking at Mitchell, it'd be a smaller backcourt with him and Quickly beside each other. But, I mean, they complement each other well, at least in the backcourt, besides being small. Vasenkov, we'll see. Wasn't there reports that he was trying to go to Europe, but he's under contract, so I'm not sure kind of where his head's at. Decent flyer, EuroLeague MVP, I believe.
Yep.
And then you get another pick in the 45 range. So for Jalen McDaniels, and I believe they got a second late as well in a couple of years. So, I mean, Masai, I don't know how he pulled that one off, but from Toronto's point of view, like it's pretty good.
Well, for those people who are joined after I gave the whole trade rundown, so the trade is Jalen McDaniels goes out one way. Coming back is Davion Mitchell, Sasha Vazenkov, and then the 45th pick this season. The Portland Trailblazers second rounder next season. Portland not going to be good. That pick will be between 30 and 40. That's a good spot to be in, especially as we see the second round of the draft has a little bit more, I don't know, panache to it now. You can wheel and deal a little bit more with the extra time between the rounds. So, yeah. Here's something that, Cody covered the 905. MSJ says goodbye, Javon Freeman-Liberty. It could shake out that way. But since you spent so much time covering the 905, I actually do want to ask Cody what your thoughts are on that, because there is kind of like an effect going.
I think at Raptors Republic, I'm probably the biggest Javon Freeman-Liberty supporter. If you want to check out the season review, a whole bunch of them on Raptors Republic for every player. I handled the Javon Freeman-Liberty one with very much happiness to do so. I think he's a really good player. He absolutely lit it up for the 905. He was top 5 in scoring. He does everything you want. The shooting's coming along. Shot it better this year, and even towards later in the year in the 905, you were seeing some of that self-creation off the dribble that was not there before. It was just all standstill, kind of catch and shoot stuff. He talked to me about this was his first year actually being a point guard and actually getting point guard responsibilities. I feel like there's a lot of untapped upside. And then on the defensive side of the ball, this guy's a point of attack defender. He is a 2-time MVC all team member. Mountain, I believe that's the Missouri Valley Conference. He can really defend the point of attack. At least the G League level, he was phenomenal in that aspect. He rebounds the heck out of the ball as well. Averaged 7 rebounds throughout college, 7 rebounds with the G League as well. He offers a lot, Samson. You could probably hear it in my voice. I'm excited. I'd like to talk about him. Unfortunately, just the way these things go, he might be let loose. He is a bit older, and so maybe they're going in a different direction. But if they keep him around, I would definitely not be opposed to that.
Yeah. The point guard thing is, I think the conversation around Javon was that to my eye, Javon can score the basketball at the level of a bench guard in the NBA. Unequivocally, he can do that. And I think he can guard the ball kind of in the median. Like he's like there at the NBA level. Maybe there's some like team defense stuff that isn't as good, but like on ball, he's got a little bit of juice.
There's question marks off ball for sure. There was lots of lapses of him getting beat on backdoors and he's not paying attention, or just I tended to chalk that up to just the offensive workload and him kind of taking a break on that. But you're right. That's completely on the spot. Like there is definitely questions there.
The big thing though is that he doesn't play make at the level of an NBA bench guard. And the Raptors wanted that. They gave him a chance at that, and that's why he got the reps that he did down at the 905, as you well know. Didn't return a bunch there, and that was kind of like the 905 were, and as you well know, we're in a really tough spot creating offense, running offense, setting up offense, and having somebody to guide them through so many possessions in a game. And he had an opportunity to step in and be that immediately, and it wasn't flying colors there. But he does a bunch of stuff at an NBA level. It's just so hard for guards. You have to be so good to like be a guard in the NBA, and especially if you're not huge. And while Javon is not short, he's not tall for the position, and he's a little bit slight. So
he does have length though. So he is slight, but man, I believe his wingspan is in the 6'8" to 6'10"
I think
range.
it's six
So
nine. Yes.
perfect. So that does tend to make up for some of the less physicality that he possesses, and I think his slight nature allows him to navigate screens at a decent level,
Sure.
at least on the G League side of things. But you're right, he'll get overpowered. I ultimately would love the Raptors to bring him back. I think he's shown a lot at the G League level, and when they brought him up, he did get the reps, but let's be honest, it wasn't a very conducive environment
Yeah.
to just play good basketball.
Yeah, Jonte Porter throwing games in the middle of it, man. Can you
So,
imagine?
like, ultimately, if they move on from him, I wouldn't be surprised just based on all the moves, like with Walter coming in and now Mitchell's there. I mean, the guard, at this point, does Gary Trent Jr. come back? I'm not sure if you've touched on him yet. But
Not since we talked about him last night.
so there's lots of moving parts here. We'll see what they do at 45. I'm assuming it'll be a bit of a bigger body, maybe a center, maybe Chomchi. Maybe we're all waiting for.
I'm
and
going.
you'd be phenomenal. That Twitter post of you posted pictures of Mogbo and Chomchi, like that's going down in the Hall of Fame.
Because there's murmurs about the Raptors and Chomchi, and it's very tough to like get anything cemented with the Raptors. You know what I mean? But there was like stuff. Now Mogbo was not because I heard anything, but it was because I was like, I really like Jonathan Mogbo. With Chomchi, I haven't even seen enough. That's more so like murmurs. Isaiah Crawford at 45. Is that leaked? Or is this somebody like, is this wishful thinking?
I think that's wishful thinking. I've been trying to refresh Sham's feed here. I think we're at pick 42.
Can we make a deal? You refresh Shams, and I'll do Woj.
Okay,
that'll be what it is.
So we can see who's really the battle of Woj and Shams. Okay.
Yes. So Bona went at 41. So no Dick Bona combination, unfortunately. And KJ Simpson went at number 42. Okay. There's Bruce C. If they get Isaiah Crawford, if you can actually write down what you think about him, I'd be interested to hear because I've not seen like a lick of Isaiah. Tetris. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Tetris says, what happened to the cap space? Porter held. Does he still get that money? His contract guaranteed? No, I believe all of that got voided like immediately. So yeah. Any thoughts? Well, I guess we could talk about Gary for a short bit.
Sure.
How this affects him, because I think Javon will have a chance to, push the boulder up the hill and try and, win something at camp. I think that's the position he'll be in. And
you can think he's in like a Jeff Doughton Jr. Kind of area from last year. I know their contracts are a bit different. Like, I believe Freeman Liberty has more guaranteed money than Doughton did, but I get that's kind of like what you can think of. He might be on the outside looking in, kind of.
Yeah, and a more competitive roster than Jeff was looking at as well. But yeah, that's kind of. But I guess Jeff ended up in Philly, got some money there. God bless. Yeah, I think Gary. Let's talk about a little bit now that we've seen Mogbo get drafted. We've seen Davion Mitchell and Sasha Vezenkov come into the fold. Jalen McDaniels had no bearing on whether Gary came back or not. That's not a shift. But Davion Mitchell and Vezenkov, somebody's taking minutes there. Now, it might not be a lot. I don't know exactly what it is. And the Raptors also took back around $12 million. Probably that's close to, I think, the annual salary that Gary will end up signing. I think Gary, I would presume, mid-level exception on a decent team, if I had to guess, or maybe like 14, 15 on a team that's just like, let's just get shooting in-house. Maybe that's the Raptors. But I am expecting a departure of these two, which the players love Gary. Gary is a consummate pro. I think he's treated people extremely well. He's been very wise in how he's approached his position with the Raptors, a fairly turbulent position, but on court, he hasn't delivered on what some people thought his upside was, and he stagnated in many of the skills that people wanted him to progress in. And he's made a handsome amount of money with the Raptors. I thought, like, got a contract that was more than the impact he was giving over the course of the past 3 seasons, and that's kind of where we are. Do you think he ends up a Raptor next season?
I mean, based on the moves they're making, and you got to think they're operating like he's not going to be there, right? I mean, they've really addressed this guard spot now. Part of me doesn't want to lose the asset, just pure like NBA. Like, I know. Okay, you're making a reaction at that, so I want to hear your. I get it if he doesn't fit and he hasn't necessarily been performing, but I mean, just part of the letting people walk. I get it if you want to move forward, but I mean, I guess hindsight's always 2020, but then looking back, it's like, well, why didn't they move off of him sooner? I know it's iffy, but I'm always never pro like losing the asset for nothing, if that makes sense.
So, Jurisic just went at 43 for what it's worth. And I know some people really like Jurisic. Okay. The term asset, if you don't get Gary on a really nice contract, I think that will not be attached to him, that term. That's like, Gary is a player. He's an NBA player. He's a rotation player. Depending on the makeup of a team, he can squeak into a playoff rotation, I think. But there's guys who squeak into playoff rotations making like between 4 to 8 million. And if Gary's making like 15, especially if you're looking to move him, the type of team that wants Gary wants him cheaper and probably isn't going to trade for that situation. I don't know exactly what's to be had with Gary. I mean, if you had told people like during the trade deadline, like if there was a swap of Gary Trent Jr. for Adrian Griffin Jr., they'd be like, the Raptors just got a steal. And Adrian Griffin Jr. just went for the 44th overall pick.
Yeah. He just completely wasn't being played in Atlanta. I think I think Snyder just didn't like his defense. And I think he was just couldn't be on the court defensively. I guess I just tend to buy there's more upside with Gary than he's shown. I mean, the defense was better 2 years ago. And then last year, at least to me, it seemed like maybe, I don't know if the effort wasn't there, but it didn't click for him on that end. And then when offensively you're not fitting into Darko's system about really wanting to move the ball and you're more just, you're not passing it and you're just shooting up shots every time you get the ball, I could see why they'd want to move on. I tend to buy a bit more upside with Gary. I've always been a bit higher on Gary. And I mean, I feel like I believe the MLE price is around 12, 13, something like that. Maybe it's a bit higher. I think lots of teams would have interest in him at the MLE price. So I think when you kind of counter with the asset, if you would take an MLE, and the Raptors could get him at around that, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back. I'd have to look at the cap structure and see if that's actually viable now after this trade. I haven't done that, but I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah. Different ideas of his game, maybe a little bit. We disagree on some of the margins. However, I think I'm gonna come out on the side prediction wise. I don't think Gary is a Raptor next season. Do you have a final answer on that?
I think that's a completely fair take. The Raptors are on the clock. Let me. Should I wait for the prediction after the pick, or should I? I mean, they're not going to take a guard, right? Like
make your prediction. Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll say Gary comes back. Just for the podcast, for a difference of opinion.
So they're on the clock. I'm just excited that this means that we're coming to the end of this podcast soon. That's what. Okay, so Pele Larson went at 44.
Yeah.
And Jurisic went at 43.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll see what it ends up being.
So, I guess some names some people could have their eyes on, like Ulrich Chomchi is somebody we've talked about, that you've talked about with Trey before.
How familiar are you with Chomchi, by the way?
Some degree, yeah.
Okay.
He has a lot of upside. Like he's raw, but I mean he can even potentially space the floor with. He's nearly 7 foot, 7'4" wingspan. Like just verticality is the big thing I have in my notes about him. Boxes out, runs the floor hard. It's just he's raw. He's still learning the game. Like you can tell. I'm not gonna act like I've watched every game of his. This is just from me reading up and watching highlights and just making my own.
I only saw the scrimmages. Like that's all I saw.
Yeah. Okay. So
Big blocks.
he's massive.
Yeah.
He is massive. And there's potential to shoot the three. Like in his stats here, I believe it was very small sample size, like 3 or 4 or 5 games, something like that. 38% on 7 attempts per game. Like that's kind of crazy. I almost had to like clean my glasses when I looked at that, but there's potential there. Like I think a name like Serge Ibaka is you could throw around, but we'll see. I know some analysts have him like outside of like top 80. So we'll see who they end up picking, but I wouldn't mind that for Toronto. Who do you like? Who like? Do you have any name you'd like, or at least that archetype?
I think a big is I like the big being something that they target, especially since I'm kind of what I talked about yesterday was that I do think Scotty is a guy who can kind of give those guys extra juice with how he's able to create. That's something I'm wondering about and keeping an eye on, and something I'd like to see, quite frankly. I'm not particularly picky at 45.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the thing too is I don't want to Mogbo. I actually saw games. I actually watched clips. I actually looked, and it creates like this situation where I've seen more of Mogbo than I have a lot of other players. He also has like if you're stat line scouting, it's nice there too. There's lots of stuff to like except for the shooting, and that's so he stood out to me, and then that's where I was at. However, I haven't seen hardly like I just haven't seen much of the guys available left. Haven't dedicated much time to it. And that's why when I was like, because I'm like, I think it's gonna be Chauncey. I was like, hey, do you know anything about Chauncey? And you're like, yeah. Then I'm like, good, because I need somebody to bounce off of because I can't just like wax poetic, you know.
I did a decent report. I made my own top 60. I'm a bit of a nut for it, so I do enjoy throughout the season like making some notes. I'm not gonna act like it was my full-time job. I'm not trying to sell anybody on that, but I just like giving my opinion. Obviously, I like hearing myself talk. I do wonder if they would take like a pure point guard, like your boy Cam Spencer. I guess he's not a pure point guard, but Cam Spencer is on the board. A Jamal Shead is somebody that I don't believe he's been taken. That I wouldn't mind. I've been a bit higher on him. Trey Alexander is somebody that I'm a bit high on. Those are some of the guards I wouldn't mind. If they want to go wing, Justin Edwards out of Kentucky he was supposed to be real like a lottery pick, and now he's completely fallen out. So they could go a lot of different ways. Like always, you don't want to draft. The Raptors have stated repeatedly that it's always BPA for them. So we'll see who they end up taking. I'm excited though. I'm excited. I always am.
I do like Jamal.
Yeah.
He is maybe like I do wonder if just the way that Houston played defense, if like when you look at Mogbo and Scotty, how they like to play, if you could hope for a pretty good defensive tandem between those guys and guarding actions together.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I did that podcast with Jack Quantrill, he's talking about like the line of scrimmage that Houston is defending against, right? Like they want to keep everything above there. Right. And then also, yeah, like he is a guy that when everybody talks about like pure point guard, and what that means is he's probably not scoring that much, but people like a lot of the other stuff that's going on with his game.
Hey, there it is. They take Jamal Shead. There it is.
They took him?
They took Jamal Shead. So look at that. Just pro podcasters. Hey, just look at me go. Look at me go.
I have a little write up on Shead.
Me as well.
Okay. Let's see. What do I
go ahead? All right, I can take it if you want to pull it up.
Go ahead. Just the quick numbers. Jamal Shead. I thought it was. Is it Shead or Shead?
I thought it was Shead. I could be wrong. I
Let's
believe
both. Let's both. I'll say Sheed. You say Shed. That way we
okay.
got something there.
One of us
So,
gets okay.
13 points per game, 3.7 boards, 6 assists, 41% from the field, 31% from three, 78% from the line. He has a modest 3-point rate. He has a modest free throw rate. He is a pretty creative passer. He controls. He controls possessions, I find, and the biggest sell, I think, relative to the rest of the draft class, is he guards his position exceptionally well.
Oh yeah.
That is the big sell with him. And this confuses me a little bit because Davion Mitchell plays for the Raptors now.
I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
So I guess I don't really know. But yeah, I like Sheed. I like him. I talked about him with Jack, and Jack had a pretty good pitch on Sheed as well. If anybody wants to hear a more convincing portion on Jamal Sheed, I'll send a link in here, and you can go watch on the Raptors Republic YouTube channel. I talked about Jamal with Jack Quantrill. Cody, go ahead. Wax poetic, if you will.
Yeah, so I guess I'll paint a bit of a nicer picture. I think he's not 22 yet. He's only 21. I think people hear senior and they're thinking like 23, 24-year-olds. He doesn't turn 22 until July. So I'm not saying there's like upside to that. I'm just pointing it out. Yeah, I mean, tremendous point of attack defender. Like it's like him, Devin Carter, and Steph Castle for like point of attack guys in this class. Great motor. Playmaking, I've loved the playmaking. He can play make off the bounce. He plays fast, like he's really fast, but he also changes the pace when he's attacking the paint. He's a crafty finisher, which he's with shoes on. He's 6'1.5", so I would hope you're a bit of a crafty finisher just to get it off. I do think there's untapped shooting potential. Something I have in my notes. He's got the touch around the rim. He's nearly 80% from the line, just hasn't really extended that out. You mentioned it, just under 31% on nearly 4 attempts per game. So below average for sure, but I think there's upside. Just the question offensively for me is kind of needs the ball in his hands. So what's the offensive role? Like, are you just hoping he's your backup point guard who runs the offense and stabilizes things while providing good defense? Because I'm not sure. He shot subpar off the catch as well. Yeah. I mean, and at 6'1", you're not really asking somebody at that stature to play off ball, but his role is very limited.
I do, I can't. Who was it? Amit Kumar says Sheed and Mogbo are basically spending their first year or two in the G League. I doubt they play for the main club unless they're clearly tanking. I'll say this. I don't think I agree about Mogbo. He could get some G League time. The Raptors, although over the past couple of seasons there has been more of a break in the like synergy between Raptors and 905 than in years past. They're not as close as they used to be. There's obviously that's the G League team. There's going to be some collaboration there. Sheed as like the big guy at the 905 makes a lot of sense to me, who is helping to facilitate so much of what the Raptors want to do at that level. I do think that makes sense. I think they expected to get that with Marquise Noel to some degree, and it didn't manifest necessarily in that way. And it didn't with Javon either. However, Sheed, I think, gives them a really good shot at that in a different way than Javon. Javon is one of the best players in the G League. However, he's going to take up more of the ball for his own end than Sheed, perhaps. And also, Sheed might allow the bigs at the 905 level to guard in scheme with a little bit more precision, perhaps, in the routes he makes guys take, and he might protect them in that way. Mogbo, I guess it wouldn't surprise me a ton if he played about like an even amount of games in G League versus NBA, but I think he'll get a decent amount of like NBA looks. I do think that's a good thought, though, the G League aspect of it all. Because when you're picking up 45, nobody's expecting like home runs or anything like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's just signed to a two-way. I think when you get past, like when you're in that 45 range plus, like that's when you start to see the guys who they'll just sign a two-way contract. So it'll be interesting to see, but that'll be a big tell, right? Like if he's getting an actual NBA contract, maybe they're kind of high on, or like their thoughts on him. I think that's a good way to tell. But I think he's a candidate for a two-way contract because they now, after waiving Moji, somebody who I was very fond of, I wrote the season review for him as well. He was older, but they just didn't see a future with him. So they have two-way slots open now. But we'll see. I'm not sure how long you want to stay on. I know you've been on for a little bit, talking about everything outside of the draft as well. But I mean, there's going to be summer league, like there's going to be like these Exhibit 10s, these two-way contracts that come immediately following the draft. So there's like Cam Spencer's still on the board. Like I know that's your guy. So
I think they can get him after the draft.
You think so?
I'm hoping as a UDFA. But also, I mean, they had a shot. They had a chance to kind of control because now there could be a more attractive team that he wants to go to. That's like UDFAs. It's not getting drafted, but there's more power in your decision making.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess we'll see how that shakes up. But Jamal, that's like a thumbs up for me. Now, yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up. Sure.
I completely forgot they traded for Davion Mitchell. Like if Davion, you brought up a good point because now I'm questioning it a little bit with Mitchell on the team. Like I guess you kind of need they clearly want to defend the point of attack better. They've made that very clear with the Mitchell pickup, with the Shead draft pick. I mean, even last year when they were picking up Freeman Liberty, it was something that I'm sure they had in mind for him as well. So we'll see how it comes out. We'll see how it turns out. Anything we could say could be just thrown into the wild. Like, I mean,
a lot of this gets solved in the coming days. Like a lot of it. And also over the course of the next 3 weeks to a month with Summer League, all of this stuff comes out in the wash too. I don't think I'm going to Summer League this year, so no on-the-ground reporting from myself, but I will be paying attention to it, obviously. It should be very interesting because I think Grady's going to be at Summer League. I think a couple more of the Raptors, like there's going to be a few guys at Summer League this year, and then obviously the guys they're bringing in, and I don't know who they fill out the roster with, but interesting. And also, if other guys pop off, you can just sign them. Like that's what happens with players all the time.
Like Mogbo went from Summer League invite to all the way to a two-way contract. So don't sleep on like the impact that players can make at the Summer League because Mogbo went from obscurity to getting real money, and that's something to be accomplished for. So it's a high level of basketball, man. You can't write it off. So I know everybody wants to watch like Grady and the picks, but even these guys that they bring in, like they want to give them a real look. There's potential, especially on a Raptors team that's transitioning to be nice. So there's room for, if you do something, pop off, show your stuff, there could be a role.
Mm-hmm. And also, like Javon was playing for Chicago and signed with the Raptors at Summer League.
That's another
like
point. You're showcasing your skills for all 30 teams.
Yeah, and for many players, having a good time in Vegas, all that good stuff. Cody, that feels like about a podcast. For anybody who's listening or watching right now, make sure to like the video before you get out here. It helps spread it out to people after we stop going live, and obviously more people need to hear the difference between yearning and craving. That is very important. That's top tier podcasting. I hope everyone understands. This is the top of the top. Cody, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I think if you're looking at the overall Raptors draft as a whole, I think an overall grade from me, just first reactions, is a solid B. I think that's what I'm going to sit on. I think I'm going to sit on a B.
Wait. Let's do each one. Grade each pick. Okay. Let's do that.
All right. That feels like a good way to end it. See, that's why you do this, because you just know. Jacoby, I'm gonna give it. Let's go A minus B plus.
Sure.
B plus, sure. He fits really well. Obviously, we talked about him last night, but I really like that pick. Mogbo, I'm a bit lower on Mogbo in general. I don't want to offend you.
That doesn't offend me.
I would give Mogbo a C plus B,
Sure.
around there, B minus, and then Shead, I'll give a same thing, C plus B minus. So I'm more so lower on those guys because I would have rather the Raptors taken other guys, not because of them as players. Just to be,
Yeah.
for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's always what it is. Like I probably would have I liked Duran more than I did Jacoby. However, if the Raptors had their eyes on Mogbo and they really do value Mogbo, I talked to a couple guys who said that they saw Mogbo as like a top 15 player in the draft. Maybe the Raptors felt similar as like the organization as a whole, not just a couple guys within it. They obviously do like Mogbo. That changes who they want to select at 19. Jacoby falls. They didn't work out Jacoby. They'd never talked to him. They see an opportunity to nab him. Obviously, that means they had him high on their board. So I'm going to not be the scout, but I'm going to say the Raptors really liked Mogbo. They got their guy there. And they got a guy that they identified as they didn't even expect him to be there. I'll give Jacoby an A, and I'll give Shead a C plus B minus because I think it will add stability to the G League situation. So that comes out to like a B plus A.
We could have been targeting him too, like they could have requested that pick and someone they had their. I don't believe they worked him out, but I mean, as the Raptors front office has said, it's not the be all and end all if they work out. They've generally have picked guys they've worked out. They worked out Mogbo. So I respect your opinion.
Ooh, wait. Okay.
Uh-oh.
There's something I have to watch. I'm being asked to react to something. There's a video of Jalen McDaniels reacting to getting traded to Sacramento.
You did. Yes, you. Hey, bro, you just got traded to the Kings.
I need to see
You
this.
did. Yes, you.
That's his face is so funny, man.
You did.
Is he upset?
He's surprised. He's like, "What the hell is going on here, man?"
Wow.
He's like, "Me? What the hell?" That's so funny.
Wow.
Sorry, Jalen. That's the thing. These people, like, they're people with lives, and they just get swept up
You
in it.
sometimes
Okay,
forget about that, right?
yeah. So that happened to Jalen. I can see the humor in that, obviously. And then Scotty Barnes is already very close with Jonathan. This is from a friend of the show, Adam Lascaris. Scotty Barnes is already very close with Jonathan Mogbo. Barnes just uploaded that he was at his draft party when Mogbo was taken by the Raptors.
Oh, wow. Do we know where that connection has come from? Oh,
They've been friends since they were kids. I don't know which park they met at or whatever. I assume they met at the AAU circuit, something like that, right? Yeah. Cade Gregory says college announcers pronounced it Shed for years for what it's worth. It's looking good for you, Cody. It's looking good for you, brother. I think you won this one. This is why I want to cover both bases. It's egg on my face at the end of the day, but as a team, we accomplished that. But anyway, I just wanted to watch those videos because people, I think more during the dead aspect of the stream, they're like, Samson, go watch a video that's funny.
Real quick before we end, what do you make of the new 2-day format? How did you like it? I think the feedback from NBA teams has been they like it, where they get to reset, they get to reestablish their boards, and then they're not up until past midnight or whatnot, with two-way contracts and Exhibit 10s and Summer League stuff and all that. So I personally haven't minded it. I mean, from a Raptors perspective, they've been one of the busier teams today, so it's always fun. But what do you make of it?
I don't like it.
Okay.
Because I wanted to go rock climbing today, and I don't get to where I would have been able to otherwise. However, and I also don't have content brain. Some people, they like would look at this and be like, "That's 2 days of content. You get to like do all the content." That's not for me necessarily. I'm glad to be here with everybody, but that's not for me necessarily. I think now that's my selfish response. Is like it just creates like more work. However, I do think that this allows NBA teams to leverage more of their information and perhaps make better decisions for their teams with more info, which I think is better for the players in the long run. Also, if there is enough interest in the NBA at large that they can actually go 2 days, then, I mean, that's good for the league. More eyeballs, more whatever. OG3 says Samson yearns for rock climbing. Others crave content. Oh, you're on the money there, man. Come. Yeah, that's exactly it. For anybody who wants more work, I will be searching around and locating people who know more about these players than I do. We typically do like a big scouting report on whoever gets drafted. We've got 3 attempts at that this season. I'll be looking around for that. So stay tuned for that. Also, the written stuff, Brendan Stewart, he'll be writing about the draft from the Raptors' perspective. So that's where we're at. Cody, now I think we're really at the end of it. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Reggie Jackson just got traded to the Hornets.
I saw that.
So it feels like a solid place to end it. Again, thanks for. I'm glad I could come and save the rock climbing Kramer conversation that was going on. So
Yes.
no, like I said, love covering the Raptors. I'm going to be on the 905 beat to some degree this upcoming season. So if you love the 905 stuff, I'm thinking of maybe, like uploading some videos on the Raptors Republic about like a 905 roundup, maybe something like that. So something if people would like to watch, I would guess maybe let us know. So
also worth saying for people who want to keep up with Cody and his work, a really good place to do so is Twitter at Cody Wiles Sports. That's where you can find his handle if you want to follow along. And on top of that, I think just stay tuned with Raptors Republic, all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Like the video before you get out of here. Joseph Cassidy says, climb that rock, brother. Good pod. Or is this the second false ending? I do false end. It's because I'm scatterbrained. I'm not going to allow it to get that far this time. All right, Cody, my fellow Saskatchewanian, thank you for saving me from the dregs of rock climbing talk on a basketball podcast. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night or live, am I covering the debate? Shut up. That's enough out of you guys. All right, everybody. Have a blessed day and goodbye.